Hello, everybody. This is Laura talking. Welcome to our presentation, Teaching English to Deaf Students, Challenging and Possible. Just to give you a little more context about what's going on here, there are 4 people involved in this presentation. We have Nina Guzman, Maria Laura Chan, and myself, Laura. And then behind the computer, we have Vero, who is the interpreter. She's going to be interpreting for Maria Laura. So Vero will work as Maria Laura's voice and Maria Laura's ears. We're gonna be sharing the headphones. So whenever we're gonna switch the speaker, we're gonna be changing the headphones. So just so you know. So we're very happy to be here in this event with all of you. This more than a presentation is going to be an opportunity for us to share what we're doing and what we're learning in relation to teaching English to deaf students. This is a very interesting project and it's the first time here in Costa Rica. So to start, I'm gonna change the slide. So this project involves 2 institutions. One of them is Centro Espiral Maná. And Centro Espiral Maná is a training center. So English teachers come here for 4 weeks to take this intensive course, the SIT TESOL certificate course. And then the other institution involved is Hands-On. Hands-On is an institution that teaches sign language to hearing people. Their mission is to create awareness of what it takes to communicate with deaf people, and also to promote more integration and a more inclusive education. So to continue, we're going to have Maria Laura share something about the deaf culture.
Hi, I'm Maria Laura. I'm a deaf teacher. I'm using Lesco. What is Lesco? It's Costa Rican Sign Language. And that's the language we use now in Costa Rica for the deaf community. I want to explain to you a little bit of context about deaf people here in Costa Rica. We are 70,000 deaf people, but only 2% have education. That means that they know. That means 98% don't have education at all. Why? Because parents, they can't communicate with their children, or maybe teachers can communicate with their students. They feel like deaf cannot get education, so they don't bring them to school. Or the teachers don't know how to communicate with deaf students, with deaf children. That means what? That a lot of deaf people right now don't have a job. And that's we want to explain to you how important is this project here to teach English for deaf so they can find new job opportunities and have a better quality of life. A lot of people think and see deaf people from a medical perspective. That means that they're just deaf and they just can't listen, and it's a medical issue and they cannot do anything. Well, we're the same. The only difference is we can hear, we can do everything. So we are a minority, and that makes us unequal. So in the world, we are not having adaptations or access. That means there is no opportunities or access for us. There are 2 main things we don't have access to that are hard for us. Education is one, and then information. But right now, I'm going to focus more profoundly on education. Education system here in Costa Rica is not working for us because deaf people is not working for us, deaf people. That's why it's hard for us. And also, a lot of people see us deaf people like they shut us off, and they don't understand we have a culture, we have an identity, we're a community, just as other people. A lot of deaf people feel like they're pressured that they cannot finish school or high school. They have never studied. And that's why my motivation to be here right now at SAM is to teach deaf people so they can have and find better opportunities. Because companies here in Costa Rica, a lot of them ask for English as a requirement to get a job. And that's why I want to give them those options.
Hi, this is Nina Guzman. Well, as Malis, Maria Laura, she was saying, we both work in Hanson Lesco, which is this institution. Then we are mostly dedicated to teach sign language. So we both are sign language teachers. I'm also a preschool teacher, and Maria Laura, she has experience teaching Spanish to deaf people too. But this is our first encounter with the English world, like teaching English world, and that's why it is so special for us to be working like in a group. That's the reason we both, Maria Laura and I, are here. We are taking the TSO course as participants. So we are basically learning how to teach English and mostly focusing on how to teach English to deaf students. So it's been a really interesting experience because here at Centro Espiral Mana, this 4-week course is in the place, like we are in the middle of the, how to say, the countryside here in, it's rural Costa Rica. It's called San Carlos, San Ramon, but we're living far away from the city, so we're working together like 24/7. And also the trainers, everyone here is teaching us so much. Our days include like having workshops, we're learning how to teach English, also planning sessions, feedback sessions, and the teaching practice. We are out actually practicing with 7 deaf students from the community, so we also are applying what we're learning right now. We have been here for 3 weeks, and we have 1 week left in this certification. And some takeaways from this until now, we are learning the different frameworks that we are applying with the students, ACREF, PTP, and some other frameworks really interesting for working with deaf people. And also learning how to give feedback. That is something very important that we have been working here. And Centro Espiral Mana, the nonviolent communication is one of the things that make this place very special. And learning how to apply that to students, partners, teachers is something that is basically changing our life here in this project. Now, Laura is going to talk about having Maria Laura as a participant and the different things that you have to be aware of, right, as an institution.
So as a trainer who has done this course many times, this has been a very challenging, a very beautiful, challenging situation for us to have a deaf participant. And we're actually learning so much from Maria Laura that this experience has been actually a blessing for all of the trainers on the course and also for all of the people who are part of Centro Espiral Mana. To be able to do this, we had to do a lot of adaptations to our workshops and to other dynamics on the course. And we wanted to share some of them with you to give you an idea about the depth of our learning about teaching to the deaf people or to deaf people. So one of the main adaptations that we have is to have an interpreter with us. Vero has been a blessing for all of us, and especially for Maria Laura, because she has been Maria Laura's main channel of communication, and it's the way that Maria Laura can access information on the course. Another adaptation that we have done is to integrate more writing in speaking sessions, which was quite a challenge because during the first week of the course, most of the workshops are about developing speaking fluency in students. So when we thought about Maria Laura coming to the course, we thought, what are we going to do? So she can't hear or she can't speak. So maybe what we need to do is create a different workshop for her. But then we decided to have a different perspective on this. And we decided to look at what Maria Laura can do. And she can read and write. So what we did for speaking sessions, for example, there is one experience where participants learn to use 5 Korean numbers. And the purpose of that is to help them go through the experience of learning a different language and to perform a fluency activity at the end of the session. So when we were planning for that session, we met with a trainer and we were thinking this is not possible, because at the end of the session, all the participants need to speak and they need to say the numbers. But then again, as I said before, we focus on what Maria Laura can do. And we said, okay, what if we integrated writing in this session? So we adapted all the activities. So whenever somebody was interacting in Korean or saying the numbers in Korean, Maria Laura was reading the numbers in Korean. Whenever, for example, somebody asked her a number in Korean, instead of her saying the number, she would write the number in Korean. So seeing that session was mind-blowing for all of us, because if we thought, yeah, this is a speaking session, how are we going to integrate Maria Laura? And then seeing Maria Laura being a crucial part of the session was amazing. And it was an amazing learning opportunity for all of us. And that is actually one of the main things that we're learning from this experience, is that if you integrate a little bit of writing in a speaking session, every deaf person can be included. So that's one of the adaptations. Another one was for listening, because part of this course involves teaching listening. So in one of the sessions, we have activities where participants have to do activities by listening to different songs. Again, we thought this is not possible, but then we found this software that whenever somebody's playing a song, the Maria Laura can see the lyrics popping up, and Maria Laura could do every single activity that as everybody else in the session. So this was another big learning that we had. If you integrate this software into a listening class, deaf students can see the lyrics or can see the scripts coming up in the screen, and they can do exactly the same activities as everybody else. That was another big learning that we had about speaking and about listening and integrating that in our workshops. And we have many other learnings that we're taking, but I want to share those two, which are the main learnings about having a deaf participant in our course. I would say that the main learning has been for all of us to be integrated into the deaf world. And that is something that is priceless for all of us. Now, Nina is going to share a little bit about our experience with our deaf students.
Thank you. Okay, yes. So you can see there in the picture, we are there with some of our deaf students. They're all of them right there. Yeah. And that one is the classroom where we are teaching the students. They are coming twice a week to the school, to the Centro Espiral Maná, to learn English. We have 7 students right now. They are from 20 to 50 years old, and they are from this community. Some of them live like 20 minutes away from here, and some of them like 50 minutes, 1 hour from here. So Centro Espiral Maná is also helping and working with the transportation for most of the students. And as Maria Laura was saying, education, access to education is not for deaf people. It's not that common in Costa Rica and not in this part of the country. So most of them, they haven't finished high school. None of them have finished high school, and most of them haven't had like successful access to education at all. So some of them doesn't know how to read or write in Spanish like fluently. So for us, it's been a challenge to work with them. But they have this amazing energy. They are really eager to learn, and they are learning really, really fast. And all the experiences that we are learning here as participants of the course, we have been applying some of those strategies with the deaf students, and we are like together working and learning how to teach them in a way that is significant, and they are communicating so much to us. We feel like we learn a lot from each session, and as a group we're growing and learning really, really fast. It's like we are all amazed about it. I would like to say about them, no, some of them, I mean, one have a job, the other one, they are unemployed right now or are not studying, but they are really motivated to learn English and use it as a tool for getting a job and having more educational opportunities also outside Costa Rica. Maria Laura is going to talk a little bit more about the experience with them.
Sorry.
Okay. That experience has been really challenging, as Nina said, because there's no basic Spanish for some of them. They don't have the Spanish tools. So we have to take that into consideration when we are planning our lessons to integrate their previous knowledge in the class. But they've all been successful and we had many achievements. One class, for example, it was really challenging. It was an impact for me because I never thought about that before. In the class, I was teaching about the topic of a job interview, connected to understanding some vocabulary, how to say my name, how to say how old I am, where do I live, those kind of questions linked to a job interview. And then I said, hey, have you ever gone to a job interview? And none of them had gone to a job interview. They didn't have the experience. And I felt like, oh wow, I never thought about that. Because I thought about my experience in San Jose. I've already gone to job interviews, but here outside of San Jose in the rural Costa Rica, there are less opportunities for them. So that was really challenging because we need to plan differently and plan differently to teach them. But the whole class was a success because with the framework, I was able to teach them perfectly. It was easy for them to scaffold the knowledge and it worked. So it was a challenge, but it was possible.
So now I'm going to share a little bit about what we're learning about teaching English to deaf students. One of the things we're learning is about which teaching model to use. And we are being inspired by this teaching model that is called bilingual signing teaching model. And in this model, the idea is to integrate sign language with language learning. So a crucial part of our classes are to integrate sign language. So for example, in one way that the students can understand the meaning behind the words they read. So that is what we're doing. And as part of that, we are integrating finger spelling also as a way for students to decode words in English. And this was very interesting because last week we did reading with them. And everybody, when they were reading a task, they were all finger spelling the text. And this was amazing for me because I could see everybody following the words in English, and then at the same time they were spelling the words in Lesco, which is a Costa Rican sign language. And that got us thinking about what finger spelling, the role that finger spelling has for deaf students. And we came to the conclusion that that is the way that they decode words in English. And this is similar to when we're like reading a text and we're doing it out loud. You know, sometimes you're reading a text and you need to do it out loud in order to decode words. So instead of reading it out loud, what they do is that use finger spelling. I think we're running out of time, so I'm gonna move to the following, just to give you more. Yeah. So based on our experiences of what we're learning here, we want to offer some useful tips for teachers. So in case that you have a deaf student in your class one day, we think that this is something that we want to offer so that you are better prepared. One of our biggest learning in this experience has been learning about the deaf culture. So one thing that you can do if you have a deaf student, please read about the deaf culture. Please try to learn sign language if that is possible for you. And I think that is like the biggest takeaway from this experience, because if you want to teach a student, then you need to know that student and you need to understand what the student is going through and you need to understand the student's world. We have discovered so many interesting things about the deaf culture, and I think that we wouldn't be able to do what we are doing without knowing that. So one of the things we want to share with you is please learn a little more about the deaf culture. Another thing that we want to offer is using visual materials more, using gestures, mimics, pictures, photos, and written language on the board is crucial. This is something that we're doing here in our workshops, and we're doing also with the deaf students in the practice teaching that we're doing. And we see the great impact this has in the way they have access to information. So that is, if you use visual materials with hearing students, then for deaf students, this is even more important. So if you have a deaf student, please use more visual materials with them. Another one is using different resources. Here, for example, we have mini whiteboards that are this big, and we use that for deaf students to be able to communicate with hearing people. For example, in some of the workshops that we have Maria Laura interact with other participants by writing questions or writing answers on the mini whiteboard. If you don't have a mini whiteboard, you can use a piece of paper. So you can use a piece of paper to have students interacting with each other. If they are deaf, they can interact with each other, and at the same time, they are using the whiteboard to write. They're also practicing English because they are writing and reading in English. If you have deaf students integrated with hearing students, then that will be a crucial thing for them to be integrated in the class and to have, that is a way that you can communicate with hearing people that don't speak sign language. Another one, if you're teaching a listening class, it would be very helpful for deaf students if you can make them part of the class, first of all, and that you can integrate lyrics or scripts or captions. If you don't have access to software to have the captions for the videos, you can just print the lyrics, print the scripts, and then your students can, the deaf students can do the same activities as hearing students are doing. And I think the most important part here is to find a way to integrate deaf students into what other hearing students are doing. So this is something that we found very helpful, to integrate Maria Laura and to integrate other deaf students to our classes. And another one is making reading and writing the focus of the teaching. In our case, for our project, the focus for us is to teach reading skills and writing skills to deaf people. At the beginning, when we were sharing about this project with other people, they thought that we would be, when we said we're going to teach English to deaf students, they thought, oh, you're going to teach American Sign Language. But American Sign Language is different from English. It's not the same. So this is part of the deaf culture. Most people think that sign language are equivalent to another language. Like, for example, Lesco is equivalent to Spanish, and that's not so. It's different. Sign language is a different language. So this is something that we want to emphasize, is that when you're teaching English to deaf students, it is teaching them how to read and how to write in English. It is not teaching them American Sign Language or any other sign language that is used in an English-speaking country. There are many different resources you can find about how to teach reading and writing to deaf students. And we can share, I wish we had more time to share all these resources with you. We're really, really excited about this project, and we're learning a lot. And we really want to be like a small part to inspire you to go out of your comfort zone, because this is something, you will be immersed in a new world, and it is an amazing world. I myself have been studying sign language for 2 months now, and I, as a language teacher, this has been the most heartwarming experience I've had. And as a human being, it has been a very inspiring people to have a very inspiring experience to get to know deaf people and how brilliant they are and all the talents they have. And I really want to do my best to make this project work, because this has become like my mission now, not just as a language teacher, but as a human being. We all want to promote a more inclusive classroom and a more inclusive world. And this is like something little that we're all doing in order to contribute to that. And hopefully after this presentation, you can take away some of the techniques we share with you and some little information. But mostly our intention is to create awareness of the deaf culture, the deaf world, and how important it is to integrate deaf people into education and into having better job opportunities, and how important it is for us to learn sign language. I think that is another part that we didn't have much time to share, but it is important to also learn sign language as a way of being more inclusive, and also with language especially. I want to share one anecdote that I have. When I started interacting with one of our deaf students, I got really emotional because I saw my sign language is not very proficient. I'm still learning, so I can't communicate very fluently. But I was so amazed at how this student was adapting to myself. So he was making adaptations in his language so that I could understand what he was signing. And that moment for me was precious because I thought, if a deaf person is adapting their language in order to communicate with me, why can't I adapt my way of thinking in order to integrate them into the hearing world? And with this, I want to wrap up our session here. I don't know if Nina or Maria Laura want to share something else.
Maybe something. Yeah. One of the day, Mary told us she has been asking in different schools if English teacher has deaf students, and some of them has said yes, yes, yes. And how do you teach? And I said, we just don't. We just give them the materials, and that's it. So we are really encouraging teachers to learn sign language and to learn sign language mostly if you have deaf students. But also, if you don't know sign language, be sure that there's a lot of tools that you can start using and applying or communicate with deaf students while you are also learning sign language, right? So please have an open mind, and that's it.